Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Are you ready?
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Now broadcasting live from the After Hours AM studio, Joel Sturgis and Eric Olsen.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
better known in some circles as the Three Amigos of True Crime. And tonight we got a great guest on tap, man. Who do we got tonight in the second hour?
we have the producer of the brand new, revived Cold Case Files on A&E, Ari Mark.
Very, very cool. It's going to be a great interview. Can't wait to talk to him about the reboot of Cold Case Files. It's been off the air a while, and I love the original, don't get me wrong, but we did happen to see a screener of the upcoming, and I got to tell listening audience, I almost like the new one better than the old one. I mean,
it's much less dry, right?
Yes, it's hard to, it's like asking who's your favorite child. You just can't pick one, but I'm telling you, the new one, in my opinion, is a little faster paced, a little more story driven. I found it to be more entertaining as a whole, just as informative, but more of an entertaining package.
They have more access to the actual people involved in the case, because that was the thing about the old Cold Case. I'm sure everybody remembers the old Cold Case Files show. It was very good, but it was mostly focused on the forensics, and they didn't have a lot of interviews with people that were actually intimately connected to the case, and now they do.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Some would say that the old one was on the dry side. A little dry, a little technical, to where this is more of a story-driven affair about the case, rather than, the science, of course, makes an appearance, but it's not the engine that drives this car.
Right. I agree. And I think that's a change for the better, even though I think Cold Case Files is still one of their most popular shows, as it should be. And there's a couple of cases that I hope that we talk about, that actually get to a couple of cases tonight.
Yeah.
I think some of those are pretty good.
Well, I suppose we should jump into it. We have so much to cover this first hour. I guess number one would be the Chris Cornell incident where he allegedly, or not allegedly, he did commit suicide. And
is that the official ruling?
Well, they're speculated. I did hear he did. Other people say he didn't. What did you hear, Eric? Why don't you be the tiebreaker? What did you hear?
Oh, I don't think there's much question that he committed suicide. The problem or the issue was it caused by the influence of the anxiety medication that he was on.
Yes, he
and
was.
Apparently, he took more than he should have. First of all, so that was a problem. But
that's a rough one for me, though, guys. I'll talk about that.
Yeah, talk about that. We will.
This is coming from his wife. His wife is
Vicky
convinced
Cornell.
that he overdosed on his anxiety medication, which led him to suicidal thoughts and action.
Well, that's I mean, like overdosing on the medication Ativan, if that had been the cause of death, I guess, although to be quite honest, that's hard to do. So Ativan, just for those of you who don't know, Ativan is an anti-anxiety medication, but it is not in the same class of drugs technically as, say, Valium, right?
Okay.
Like for those of you that have had a Valium before, you can really
it's wonderful.
feel it.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
right before they put me in surgery, a few surgeries I have had, it's like they hit you with a giant dose of Valium. And you're like, you could care less what they're going to do.
Right. Like we're going to cut you open and who cares?
Carve me up. I could care less. I'm on cloud 9.
Exactly. So those are a typical benzodiazepine. Valium is a typical benzodiazepine. It's a benzo. And those are very addictive. Ativan, on the other hand, is not. And that's what I want people to understand about Ativan. Ativan is not typically considered an addictive drug. It doesn't have the same addictive properties or the same sort of rush that you get from a typical benzo. It's usually prescribed to people that have had drug problems but still have anxiety, but it doesn't have the same sort of rush. It would take not that it doesn't make you relax, but you don't feel it like you do.
So it's not like sit back, pop your Valium, and go, oh, yeah. Jam it up to Pink Floyd kind of thing,
You'd have to take quite a bit to get that much of a sedating effect, which he really could have done. But would a sedation make someone suicidal? I have yet to see that happen.
Yeah, well, true. There isn't a lot of good science. I haven't heard, rather, one way or another, whether Ativan could kill you, but you're saying no, and I'm reading this as you're talking.
I think it could.
It couldn't, but it would have to be in extremely high doses.
Massive doses to really, it would be the respiratory, like to impair your respiratory, your heart rhythm, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Unless there was some sort of adverse reaction. But I'm guessing he killed himself in a different way. What I'm thinking is with the Ativan could have, if he was suicidal anyway, right?
Sure.
That Ativan could have relaxed him enough to take away some of those anxious feelings about actually going through with the act.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know. I'm reading some info as you're talking, and you're right. It is not considered to be that kind of drug that would make you high, so to speak.
Not at all. It's used in state hospitals. It's used in prisons because it is quote unquote safe.
Yeah, it is actually safe. Very low instances of any kind of bad things happening to anybody while they're on it.
This is the drug we give to people that have massive complications with medications because it is so clean.
Yes. That's what I'm reading right here. It's given to. It's even given to heroin addicts.
Yep. Yes, exactly. It's given to addicts. It's given to people who are medically impaired.
Yes, I'm reading everything that you're saying, Doctor. Right on the money. You're absolutely correct.
So what is the line of reasoning then from his wife? Why is she alleging this, and what is
grieving? That's my guess. She's grieving. I mean, I can't. Would it slur his speech if he took enough of it? Sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was something else found in his system. I'm just going to say that right now.
Okay.
Because you'd have to take a darn lot of Ativan to have it slur your speech, unlike Valium, which, you can take a bit of and it does. You'd have to take a lot of Ativan for it to slur your speech. So he may have been, under the auspices of some other drug at the time as well. I won't be surprised to hear that.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I really wouldn't be if more comes out, because much like the Prince situation, no one knew really what he was doing until more came up. But this was not an overdose in the traditional sense. This allegedly was a suicide. And
Ativan's not going to make you suicidal.
His wife, as Eric alluded to, released a statement. And I'll read some of her statement because it's quite long and quite wordy. Vicky Cornell, the wife of Soundgarden singer Chris Cornell, issued a statement Friday morning where she remembered her late husband, who died Thursday morning at the age of 52 years old, and speculates whether his suicide was a result of taking too much of his anti-anxiety medication. Chris's death is a loss that a specialist of words. I've never heard someone use that, and could create music like no one has ever experienced. It's too bad that he will no longer be with us, is something that she was saying. But I'm looking for more details in this quick Rolling Stone piece about what his mental state was like. According to her, his world revolved around his family first, of course, and his music second. He flew home on Mother's Day to spend time with her and the entire family. He flew up midday Wednesday, the day of the show, after spending time with the children. When we spoke before the show, we discussed plans for vacation. It doesn't sound like someone's getting ready to commit suicide discussing vacation plans over Memorial Day and other things that we want to do. However, following Soundgarden's concert Wednesday night, Vicky noticed a change in her husband's demeanor, where they talked on the phone after the show. When we spoke after the show, I noticed he was slurring his words. He was different. When he told me he may have taken an extra Ativan or two, I contacted security and asked that they check in on him. She continued with what happened, and is inexplicable to her why her husband would have committed suicide. According to her, he was on no further medication at this time other than the Ativan. Does not mean, though, and I'm not saying he was, but there could be a street drug element here that we're not, that we're not being privy to.
Suicidality, for people that are unaware, suicidality waxes and wanes. Okay. Greatly and can over just a few days time span. So somebody that might be very suicidal one day, the next day is discussing future plans. That's extremely
Is that
common.
normal? Because
Yes.
I've never been around too many people that were suicidal, so I really can't speak on this. I would imagine if somebody's thinking about checking out, they're not going to be talking about vacation next week.
It totally depends. I mean, for some people, the suicidal, ideation is all the time and they're just down, down, down. But more often than not, it's people that are struggling really hard with depression and they really want to make future plans. And maybe they're feeling a bit more up when they're having a conversation, or maybe they're trying to boost the other person up a little bit by talking to them. It doesn't mean that those thoughts aren't still at the back of their mind, and that something like drugs or a bad experience, like let's say he had a bad experience on stage that night, took a drink that he shouldn't have taken, took some Ativan, all of that mixed into one, and somebody that has already got suicidal ideation could be enough to push him over the edge. And what Wikipedia is saying, not that Wikipedia is the be-all, end-all, that the death was suicide by hanging.
Oh yeah, it was. That's been out.
Yeah, that's been out for a while, that he did hang himself, and so that's a deliberate act of suicide. That's not accidental. You don't accidentally fall in the noose.
No, and yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about like Ativan too. Like if he was so impaired by this Ativan, he was still able to tie a noose. And,
that is weird, and part of me is saying, really, that impaired, tying an intricate noose to hang yourself when your motor skills, you're always slurring your words, that a lot of that isn't making sense. I'm not trying to say someone murdered him or conspiracy, but it sure doesn't sound completely right to me.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, it's so hard for a family, especially one that has young kids, and the fact that he would take his own life. But I mean, another thing to understand about suicidality is it doesn't mean that he didn't care. It doesn't mean that his family wasn't first. Maybe it just meant that he couldn't get past the pain that he was feeling, and in that moment, that seemed like a better option.
Yeah. Well, there is a question from Facebook asking a drug called hydroxidine. Which is
hydroxyzine?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. I'm mispronouncing. Would that be dangerous? Because this individual's on that for anxiety.
Oh, hydroxyzine? No, that's a good. I think it's a good one. It's an antihistamine. It's like for instance, it's an antihistamine sort of in that class of drugs. Sure. It treats anxiety, nausea, things like that. I like that drug a lot. It's also known as Visceral. That's how I know it.
Gotcha.
It's called Visceral. I think it's a very clean drug. I think that it's also doesn't have the same addictive components. The drugs that I don't like are drugs like Valium.
Okay.
Because they're so addictive. Drugs like Visceral and Ativan, yes, great drugs.
There you go, listener. You don't have to worry.
In my
Nothing
opinion.
to worry about.
I mean, if they don't work for everybody.
Definitely confer with your physician. Don't take our word for it, but definitely go see your MD if you have further questions about the drug. Don't, definitely dig into it if you're worried at all. And
drink the water with the hydroxyzine. You're going to get a dry mouth, too. Just FYI. That's normal.
Yeah. Well, see, this is all kind of timely with everything that we've been talking about lately between 13 Reasons Why and other people that have committed suicide. And Eric, have you? Is it just me, or have you noticed an uptick in suicides?
Well, it's a steady drumbeat. I mean, I'm certainly more sensitive to it right now because having gone through a relatively close brush within my own family, that was, of course, very disturbing, and we're working our way out of that. But it seems to be a very steady drumbeat, and I don't know. I mean, Clarissa, of course, would know better than any of us. It just seems like, gosh, in this day and age, with all of the technology and all of the drugs and the new drugs and the constantly developing drugs, that we could come up with something that would be more of a hard barrier to this, because it's such an extreme act. It's something you absolutely cannot come back from, of course.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like this Chris Cornell, not to cut you off, had everything to live for.
Yeah.
You know, he had a decent career, with Soundgarden. I mean, he was one of the founding members of the grunge movement. Remember that, Eric?
Oh, of course.
When
but
they
of course,
came out of
as my wife was pointing out, look at all of the grunge family, so to speak. I mean, nothing but overdoses and suicides.
You're right. Kurt
But
Cobain.
is that surprising, though? I mean, okay, honestly.
Not really, based on content.
no, not really.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Not
saying,
really,
right? So these people are self-selecting
Yeah.
to that music. They're depressed already.
Yeah, I was never a big grunge guy. Sure, I like Nirvana, a little bit of that stuff, a little bit of Pearl Jam.
Pearl Jam's okay.
But that was about my extent. I was never big into the grunge, which, of course, anyone that likes it, absolutely enjoy your music. But it never really tripped my trigger.
Grunge to me, just to pass judgment here, because that's what I do. My thoughts about grunge are actually fairly similar to country music. There's a small percentage that is really, really great, and the rest of it's really pretty bad. And frankly, that applies very much to Soundgarden as well.
That is true.
Few songs
I agree.
I absolutely love. There's about one greatest hits worth of songs that are great, really cool, interesting, different sounds, and not just the same kind, because they do everything from psychedelia to flat out really noisy grunge to ballads, and so they have great songs within all those categories, but they also had a lot of to me, just kind of repetitive, boring stuff.
I'm right there with you. I really cannot really mention any songs that come to mind that I liked from the band that run out and buy. Like, oh my God, I
love Black Hole Sun.
That's about
that's
a good one.
Amazing
That's about
song.
it. Few others, and I know I'll be schooled
There's
by the
others
listenership.
right in that era, that album that was on, that was really good. As I said, there's select songs that I love where the band really clicks and they get it together. They can be super powerful. I saw them live. Quite frankly, I didn't like aspects of his vocals. What he is vaunted for is that incredible range where he goes really super high and shrieks very powerfully, and then he can still sing in really his
low.
Much more manly kind of baritone voice and everything in between. Well, I don't like the shrieking. Have you heard the earliest Soundgarden? Oh my God,
I have.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
It's
listenable.
Oh
my God, it was awful.
The other big. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you're the one thing about depression, by the way, is repeating depressive thoughts makes somebody more depressed. No big shock there, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like a Pink Floyd. Listen to a Pink Floyd song.
If you're part of a band that all you do is repeat depressive thoughts that you wrote at the most depressed parts of your life, and you have to do those songs over and over again, it's not really a surprise that those feelings are going to come up again.
I mean, Pink.
You're right. When I think about it, it's all the singers.
It is.
And the songwriters are the
it
ones
is.
doing themselves in.
It really
Like,
is.
the most depressing day of my life. Let's relive it on stage.
Well, yeah,
I'm down.
let's keep on talking about it. Yeah, because I know, like, Pink Floyd had The Wall, right? And then I watched the movie, The Wall. And I'm like, this is the most depressing movie I've ever seen in my life.
I know, it's so bad.
Oh, my gosh. I couldn't believe it. In fact, I was happy-go-lucky when I was on, one night I was on VH1 or whatever, and it was on. I'm like, oh, my God, I love the album. But this movie is just really sad. And so, of course, you can't run around singing, "We don't need no education," without thinking of that movie, of course, which takes you back to depression, going, yeah, but the poor guy went insane. Poor Syd Barrett, because that's really who it was about, really, at the end of the day, was Syd Barrett.
Well, partly. It was also autobiographical for Roger Waters, and he's not my favorite Pink Floyd songwriter.
Who is your favorite?
By any means.
David Gilmour?
Well, David Gilmour and even Syd Barrett, for that matter. I love actually some of the post-Syd Barrett versions by the band of Syd Barrett's songs, if you see what I'm saying, their performances. He's a better singer than David Gilmour. There's no question about that. And he certainly wrote some great songs. I think they're one of these bands. It's kind of a Lennon-McCartney thing, where they're just better off working together.
Yeah,
there's
I
not
would agree.
that much from either of their solo careers that I'm that excited about. I mean, I love David Gilmour as a guitar player. I'd love to hear him play guitar anytime, under any circumstances, because he's unique, and incredibly melodic and very spare. Never a wasted note out of David Gilmour, just one of those kind of perfect guitar players. Yeah. And I think he needs Roger Waters at the edge that Roger Waters brings, and they're just better off together. Independently, the weaknesses become quite obvious.
Yeah, they
and
do.
Frankly, The Wall is almost all Roger Waters. The only parts of The Wall that I actually like, or I should say, the parts I liked the best were the few David Gilmour contributions.
Yeah, no, you'd be right. You're absolutely right. They are, without each other, the sum is worth more than their parts.
Absolutely.
When they come
together.
together.
And that's not unusual.
No.
That's why the great groups are great, because somehow they came together. It's just, magical pairing, or usually a pairing, but not only. And they bring out the best in each other.
They do.
And same with Lennon and McCartney. Look at them. I mean,
Are you talking about Oasis again?
Let's not talk about Oasis.
Sorry, I had to say it. It's too funny.
Well, I love Oasis too. I really do.
Oh my Lord!
they drive
Crack
me insane.
cocaine must be wonderful.
But again, now you gotta really focus on select songs.
I was gonna say,
I never
Eric.
sit there and listen to whole albums by Oasis. I listen to greatest hits
They are
collection.
so overrated.
And they have plenty of songs for greatest hits. Really melodic, very interesting, obviously Beatlesque.
Yes.
And at their best, I love them. But they weren't always at their best.
Well,
but
no.
who is?
No, I don't ever remember them at their best. But anyhow, let's move on. One more big story, of course, which is more important in my opinion than the Cornell, no offense to Mr. Cornell, is the bombing that took place in Manchester. And that, of course, has just been all over the news. And we're learning more and more. And these poor people, lost 19 or 20 of them so far. I haven't looked at the latest count of lost their lives. At
22.
At a
and
concert.
the bomber targeted girls. Did you
exactly.
see that?
I read that. That's just sadistic.
Really?
Just
I didn't see
sadistic.
that, actually. What do you know about that?
They just said, and I didn't get into it deeply enough to see, what the sources were or anything, but it said that the bomber had sought out a group, a large, congestion area of teenage girls. Why? I don't know. Easier targets? Who knows? It's just so sick and twisted. And every time it happens, we talk about it and we say it's sick and twisted. I'll tell you, this is one area where I don't mind hearing the kind of rhetoric that we hear from the Trump camp. I mean, it must be eradicated. I don't know if it can be eradicated, but at least the effects of extremism must be eradicated.
A culture change has to happen.
Senseless.
Yeah, a culture change has to happen.
Absolutely.
For it to truly be eradicated. I mean, just simply killing them will, in a lot of ways, make them, to the people that believe in them, makes them into martyrs.
Yeah.
We are waiting for an Islamic Reformation.
Something that
we had a Christian Reformation 500 years ago.
Yes.
So it's probably about time that these guys kind of get up to speed, man.
Yeah, police
we
themselves
gotta
here.
update it. We gotta purge the negative elements.
Yeah.
That really is the one part. Now, I don't want to keep anyone out of the country in terms of by religion or by country or anything else. I mean, of course, want to keep terrorists out, but it's nothing about that. But that really is the one area where I have some sympathy, where it's not Islam, but it is a significant block within Islam that is at least sympathetic to this kind of thinking. And that really does have to be changed. And it can only be changed from within Islam. We can't force it upon them.
No, it has to be a willing change. It can't be much like when the Christians had their Reformation. It has to be a wanting to change, a wanting to turn that corner, a wanting to get the extremist faction out of that. Make them the minority. Make the headlines about how they've come so far rather than just death and destruction is what I'm trying to say. And because death and destruction gets all the headlines, you got to take that away and put positive in.
And it really does have to come from within. Go ahead.
Oh, well, they don't represent. I mean, that's the thing is, like, how do you reason with that? I don't know that you can. Extremists of any kind. They don't represent Islam or mainstream Islam in any way, shape, or form. Like, how do you reform that?
Yeah, well, exactly, because by and large, the Muslim people are peace-loving people. I mean, by and large, they really are. They're a good group of people that, much like our own religion, Christianity, had their whack jobs. And we still kind of do every now and again in Christianity. Look at Jim Jones.
Of course. Obviously, no question about it.
So, I mean,
there are extremists of every single faith.
Exactly.
India, Hindu. Look at all the crimes, terrorist killings committed in the name of Hindu. Obviously, Christians. I mean, until recently, you had two Christian factions battling to the death in Northern Ireland. That's not all that long ago.
No,
and we have people who claim to speak for Christianity or aspects of it who commit horrific crimes. No question about it. But I do think, I think just purely objectively looking at the ideology, looking at the texts, looking at how people live, there is a higher degree of tolerance for extremism. I'm not going to say for terrorism, but I will say for extremism within Islam than within other religions. And
You're
that
right.
has to change.
You are right. And, and throwing the baby out with the bathwater is not the answer here. We have to, like you said, there has to be a culture change. There has to be a change of minds. There has to be a total 180 of the course within. They have to do it within. We cannot fear them into submission. That's never going to work. They have to be proactive themselves. And
specifically, just because this is something I've thought about a lot. I got really deeply into all this after 9/11. I was covering it, writing about it, thinking about it. That was my consuming passion for several years after 9/11, was just trying to understand what had happened. How do we go forward? And I realized how ignorant I was at that point, as to how this all came about and what this represents. Anyway, the bottom line is this. The one thing that would probably make the most difference across the board within Islam is if we had a clear declaration of separation between church and state.
Yep.
Okay? That's a really big underlying problem. And it's an underlying problem within different factions within Islam. It's not just one. It's something that is across the board, and it's something that has to be addressed. Yeah. You have to have separation of church and state within any religion and any political system for each to respect the other, and for diversity of religion to be respected within that culture.
Very well said, sir. We got to run to break. When we come back, we have your, I was going to say America's Most Haunted Headlines, True Crime Headlines of Dr. Clarissa Cole. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Hey, you listen to After Hours AM, and if you're listening to us via podcast, make sure you like us, follow us, review us, tell your friends about us, tell grandma about us, and keep listening.
It's your ideas, work, and creativity that make it your yard. At ACE, we're here to help with hoses and sprinklers to nurture growth, gardening tools for the shape of good things to come, even the right fertilizer and bug killers to make the grass a little greener. You'll find it all now at ACE, your place, with everything you need for your yard, plus helpful advice, almost like we're right there. ACE,
the helpful place.
Anavar Media LCC is a dedicated team of professionals committed to helping business development scale and protect their websites, mobile applications, enterprise software solutions in the Northeast Ohio area. Locally owned since 2012, our client-centered values truly sets Anavar apart. Contact us today to learn how you can get 25% off your first project. Call them at 234-380-4852. Again, that's 234-380-4852, or visit them at www.anavar.com. Again, that's www.anavar.com.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teams, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
You're listening to After Hours AM. Do you have a question for the guests or even the host? That's really easy. Go ahead and email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Are you feeling like picking up the phone and being part of the show? Call us at 612-326-6874, 612-326-6874. Come be part of the madness.
What's happening, hot stuff?
Welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, as always, Joel Sturgis, with
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
The three amigos, like true crime. That's what some people call us that. But we are here to do your true crime headlines with the one and only Dr. Clarissa Cole. Let's dive on in, Doctor. Where do you want to go?
Well, let's see. You know what? I would like to start locally just because I can.
Okay.
So I would like to talk about a guy in West Sacramento. I usually don't talk about stuff in California, but this I can talk about. because I kind of wanted to get into it and see what you guys thought. So officers were called in Sacramento at about 3:45 a.m., and several people said that there was a man outside yelling and throwing stuff, right?
Okay.
Officers showed up and tried unsuccessfully to calm this guy down. Now, this guy was armed with a knife.
Oh, boy.
And he began to stab himself.
Stab himself?
Yes, he stabbed himself, at which point the officers used a taser on him, which had no effect.
Stabbing yourself, you fool.
The taser had no effect on the guy?
No, I'm guessing he might have been hopped up on something.
He must have been.
Taser had no effect. So then they started firing rubber projectiles at him. At which time he finally laid down and they cuffed him.
When does the
kitchen
kitchen
then
sink
he
come
died.
out? Oh, what'd he die of?
Oh, my goodness.
I'm guessing the stab wounds to himself.
Okay, well, I sure hope so. And it wasn't the police, hitting him with rubber bullets.
No, they said it was not due to that. But I kind of just wanted to get an overall reaction to that story.
Well, I would have just let the guy finish himself
trying to kill
up.
yourself, or we'll kill you.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to put you down. You either stop killing yourself or we're going to do it for you. Stop it right now.
I know,
right?
Like
I'll give you something to cry about.
Exactly. I'm surprised you just didn't cordon off the block and say, all right, man, block's yours. Go nuts.
And it's weird, too, because that's how the story was presented, and that's kind of how I was reading it as well, right? Because I'm like, oh, my God, how terrible. You're, like, taking your dying breaths after stabbing yourself, and you're getting hit with rubber bullets. I mean, after being tased, how terrible. But, I mean, looking at it, so I kind of just wanted to put it out there. I wanted to do a shout out to law enforcement because I know a few people that are in special forces, not with this incident, by the way. They don't work up here. But when they are in an incident where somebody has a deadly weapon and they are acting with deadly force toward the self, they can very easily act out against other people.
Well, that is true.
And
it's not that big of a leap.
You have to subdue them. You have to.
Yeah. Yeah, or, I was just thinking they'd cordon off the block and be like, dude, do your worst.
I would like it if they could cordon off the block, but you never know who's just going to wander out of their house at any time.
That is true.
You know?
That is true. I find it awfully funny that he's stabbing himself, going crazy on himself. Cops show up. Hey, you better cut that out. Things escalate. First they tase him, then they hit him with rubber bullets. Maybe the guy likes pain. Maybe he gets off on pain, and that's why he was doing it all.
Something was drastically wrong,
yeah,
clearly.
I don't know. I met a couple people that were into pain, and it was really weird. Meeting those kinds of folks you do once in a while, and you're like, what the hell are you doing to yourself? But the strange story, I don't know, Eric. What do you think, man?
Well, what Clarissa said is the essence of it. They do have to subdue someone, even someone who is inflicting grievous bodily harm upon themselves, because they are armed. And
True.
Who knows? They might lash out. They may decide to go from suicidal to homicidal, and so on and so forth. So while it sounds kind of ridiculous and ironic and absurd, you can understand why that would have to be the case. I'm not sure, did they utilize every other method to try to subdue him first? But I guess if the methods, they had to escalate as the methods were not working, and had to deal with it. So yeah, it sounds weird. It sounds ironic. It sounds like, isn't that about the last thing you should be doing? But again, having to subdue the guy, you got to do what you got to do.
Gots to do what you. I would have sent in the dogs.
Oh yeah,
go get him, Fido. Go get him, Fido. He'd bring him down.
All right, so I have got two stories that are not related and yet very similar. I would like to get into them because, wow, what are the odds, all right? So the first one is in Denver, all right?
Okay.
The Denver police arrested a man who was wearing clown makeup.
Oh, no.
When he allegedly stabbed and slashed a 29-year-old man to death with a glove that had blades attached to the end of each finger.
Like a Freddy Krueger.
A la Wolverine.
Oh, my gosh. I was going to say more like Freddy Krueger. But
Freddy Krueger. You're right. I think you're right.
Yes. More like a Freddy Krueger killing. But really? There's this guy in Denver that is wearing the the Freddy glove. Oh, here, let me get rid of the audio because that website's
Yes.
audio.
Apparently he was wearing the Freddy gloves, and he also, I'm not totally, he was wearing the Freddy gloves and slashed somebody to death. And then he fled on a scooter.
On a scooter. A Vespa. Sounds like a mad mosquito.
I'm getting away now. I'm going so fast.
I just hit 35 miles an hour. I'm out of here. They'll never get me. So Christian Lee Golzo, 36, allegedly attacked the victim at 12:49 in the a.m. Tuesday following an argument near Torchy's Tacos at West 11th Avenue and Broadway, according to the arrest warrant affidavit. Coroner's report identified the victim as Brian Lucero, 29. The cause of death was stabbing wounds, according to the Coroner's Report News. Witnesses told police the suspect was wearing white clown makeup. Wow. Huh. Yeah. And he also had a black streak on his face. Suddenly began threatening the victim with a glove with blades on it, 2 to 3 inches long. They say the blades were. They were near the corner store of West 10th Avenue and Broadway. Man, who dies that way? Can you imagine explaining that when you get to heaven too? So, how'd you bite it? Well,
like Freddy Krueger guy attacked me at the freaking taco place.
A Freddy Krueger wannabe guy showed up the taco joint. And
it was Taco Tuesday,
It was Taco Tuesday. Okay, it says here, Guzlo began pummeling the victim who tried to dodge the blows. The police report says the victim eventually punched the suspect, who then yelled at the victim and followed him to Torchy's. The two were the only ones in the restaurant parking lot at the time. Victim collapsed in the northeast side of the parking lot of the Torchy's business, reports say. Wow, man. And yes, he did allegedly fled on a scooter. A scooter, of all things. Police spotted the man on a Denver Public Schools Halo camera riding a scooter, matching the suspect's appearance at the 900 block.
I missed that.
Wow.
There's another problem with this. First of all, was this a glove or something the guy was wearing?
Well, I'm going to go on a limb
a
and
la
say,
Freddy. And secondly, what's up with the mixed metaphors? You don't wear clown makeup and then a Freddy Krueger glove.
No, you got to stick with
Have
one.
some respect.
You either got to be Pennywise or you got to be Freddy. You cannot be both.
Exactly.
You got to pick one and stick with it.
And neither one of them uses a scooter.
No,
it's all messed
neither
up.
one of them does. Now, the next one, I actually am looking at this picture. Just the picture looks interesting. And that'd be the Miami one.
Oh, God. You know what? These are 3 interrelated stories.
3?
Oh, my gosh. You're right, Joel. Okay. So the Joker.
Yes.
That's what he looks like, people.
He does. He's all tattooed up. Looks like the Joker.
It's on my Twitter feed. It is on author_Clarissa. You gotta look it up.
That out.
This guy, he's got green hair, and his face is tattooed to look like a bit like the Joker. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he looks a lot like the Joker. He went for the Joker smile, green hair. The Batman logo is up on his forehead. On the upper would be the upper left side.
Oh, I missed that.
And so, yeah, he's definitely a Joker wannabe. And my Lord, that is a face only a mother could love.
Well, he was pointing guns at people.
Well,
I don't know if it was because he wanted them to love him, but It might be. He said they arrested him. And Joel, do you want to tell the audience what he said his profession was?
The Joker got busted. Lawrence 29, green hair, tattoo, struck a resemblance of Joker from Batman movies. Was stopped by police Tuesday night outside Hammock's Place Apartments in West Kendall. In his pocket, a loaded Smith & Wesson handgun with 6 live rounds. People called police earlier in the day to alert them of someone looking suspiciously like the Joker, who was pointing weapons at passing vehicles. Police found Sullivan just outside the complex. He was arrested. Affidavit says the police patted him down. He told them, I have a gun in my pocket.
That really sounds like a euphemism.
Exactly. I have a gun in my pocket, don't you know? Asked for a concealed...
And I'm dying to meet you.
He asked for a concealed permit. They asked if he had a concealed weapons permit. Sullivan replied, "I don't have a permit because it's expensive." His arrest report says on Wednesday morning, Sullivan was charged of carrying a concealed firearm. He was booked into the Turner Gulford Night Correctional, get it? Night, Dark Knight, Batman, Correctional Center, and his bond was set at $5,000. I'm Batman. What was set at $5,000? Sullivan's arrest affidavit listed him as a tattoo model. I had to read that
like
whole
Zombie
thing.
Boy.
I couldn't let this story go without reading the whole thing because I love the Batman series. And actually, I find some of the Jokers that have played the Joker, the best of course, Heath Ledger, interesting to watch. But this guy is no Joker, and he's no mastermind, because if he was a mastermind, everybody knows he would have made a smokescreen and got away.
Good point.
If
and he would have been much better with his words, too.
Yeah, exactly. And no Harley Quinn. Where's Harley?
Let's face it, his face wouldn't look so half-assed either.
Well, no, if he didn't look so Jokerish, he would actually be a passable human being. But
passable.
Yes.
But he's only Joker-ish. That's
yes.
the problem.
He's not a Joker. He's not an evil mastermind. The Joker would not lure himself to being caught by police pointing guns at people. He would have his thugs doing that. That's why he has Minion, you see.
Very good point.
Yes.
Very good
Nameless Minion.
That's right. He has them to do the dirty work.
I
agree entirely.
Yeah, that makes me mad right there.
So I have a third story that is insane. There is a 25-year-old man in custody in Montana, all right, after allegedly stabbing a man with, quote, Pantera claws.
Pantera claws?
Which is basically 7-inch long blades attached to brass knuckles.
This. Yes, I have heard this story. Yes, that's
like Wolverine, right?
Missoula.
That's more like Wolverine.
Yeah, just like kind of like Wolverine, except they are an ancient weapon.
Really?
They are.
For who?
They're not called Pantera claws. I cannot remember the actual name of that weapon, but I've seen those.
The ancient pokey sticky people.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's
more. For you are the pokey
exactly. It's more like for ninjas in the movies. It's not necessarily, if you watch Enter the Dragon or Bruce Lee, I think someone's got a pair of them on. But 25-year-old man in custody after allegedly stabbing a man with Pantera claws. I like Pantera, just not the claws. Described in court documents as a set of 7-inch long blades attached to brass knuckles. Nathaniel George Bird is held on $50,000 bail for a felony count of assault with a weapon. Missoula police were called to an apartment. Why is it always apartments? On the 1200 block. Buy houses, people. Buy houses if you want to do nefarious things. I
don't want to live next to these people.
Less witnesses. 1200 block.
Let's keep them contained.
At 34th Street Saturday night after a woman called saying that her neighbor, who had blood on her hands and clothes, told her someone had stabbed her, according to court documents. Officers found blood stains and signs of a struggle in the apartment and found the bloody claw on the floor of the bathroom, according to court affidavits. Wow. Shortly after 11 p.m., a woman called 911 saying her brother had sent her a message on Facebook saying, "I'd been stabbed in the throat." He was eventually found in a convenience store, of course, and taken to the hospital for treatment. Officers found Thibbert, 33, and Bird, who had the blood on his clothes, walking together. Hey, best friends, they kill together, you walk together. What can I say? In an interview with detectives, Thibbert allegedly said Bird and the man who had stabbed were friends. They're all buddies, and Bird was staying with her. She said the three of them had been in her apartment drinking. Oh, it always starts out well that way. And she blacked out and woke up and found the man stabbed. Wow. And Thibbert was arrested on outstanding warrants. Allegedly said she owns the Pantera claws. Why would somebody own Pantera claws? Because someone clue me in on why you would need a set of these things. Why? What's wrong? Butcher knives just aren't good enough for you? What?
You need 7 or you need 5 at once with 7-inch blades?
Collector of ancient sticky pokey
I will
things?
guarantee that these are not ancient weapons. They got them at the carnival. All right? They're not like the high-end, art type weapons that you would find at a dealer's house or a collector's house. I'm guaranteeing you these are probably bought at the carnival.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I'm looking at them now. They appear to be, modern day weapons. They do seem to be associated with ninjas.
Ninjutsu, yes.
They're also called ninja-style hand claw.
Exactly. If you watch Enter the Dragon Bruce Lee, I do believe somebody has those that fights Bruce Lee. You can get them as low as...
they have them at Walmart.
They do, $36.95. Wally World will ship you a pair of Pantera claws
Walmart,
tonight.
you can't buy songs with swearing in them, but, man, you can buy every weapon your heart's desire.
I am almost... we have a YouTube channel. After Hours AM does. I don't know if everyone knows that. If you don't, you just found out.
Check it out.
You can hear all these shows. I'm almost tempted to buy these Pantera claws and give a demonstration of what they can do. But then again,
they're only
I want to see that.
Yeah, the $36.95. Except my victim will be a watermelon, not a person.
That would be very cool. I'm totally tuning into that.
You could viciously open letters.
You could. Imagine how fast 3 had to crack. Man, exactly.
I would hurt myself so badly.
Hedge clipping.
No idea.
It'd be effortless to do the hedge clipping after you own a pair of those. Just, walk around. Whatever you want to do with them, you could do it. The sky's the limit, Clarissa. You need
Seeing
a pair.
them though, Clarissa, you are actually more right. They look more like Wolverine than they do Freddy Krueger.
They do. They really do. They look like a Wolverine claw. And the only reason why I kind of knew what they were talking about is I used to be, when I was a kid, into the Bruce Lee movies. And, of course, all those ninja movies when you're a kid, like American Ninja and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of get to know what the ninja weapons are and what they look like. And, of course, who didn't want a pair of nunchucks? Come on. You did.
Oh, those are so dangerous. I would knock myself out in a flat second.
Eric
they
wanted
are
one.
Most dangerous to... Key in possession. Yes, exactly.
I mean, come on. I've always wanted a
whack
pair.
themselves over the head all the damn time.
But yeah, you could get your Pantera dagger claws with plaque. That makes it all better. For the low price of $36.95.
Wow.
Well, that's the Walmart. Yeah, they come from China. It's the Walmart version.
Well,
I mean,
that's where they should come from. They really should come from China.
Technically, ninjas are Japanese. But
Well,
we don't
technically,
have to
yes. We're not going to split hairs here.
We're not going to split Asians here.
But yes, I just might go ahead. Well, here we go. Let's go. Oh, click. Bought. All right. Let's see what they look like when they get here. Anyhow, until that demonstration happens, we will talk about Ninja Claws at a later day. Okay, what's next in Old Hopper?
Well, there is a sheriff. I was looking. So Joel, for those who don't know, Joel had posted earlier this week kind of a map of sort of the most dangerous states as opposed to less dangerous. Right?
I did.
And
Minnesota,
I'm checking it out.
Doing well.
Yeah. So like New Mexico's up there, right, on danger.
It is, according to that map.
According to the map, it's up there. So I'm like, you know what? I need to look up some New Mexico crime. So
lots of it. Breaking Bad.
There is lots of it. There's lots of it. But this is what I found. So, a man attempted to solicit sex and a pregnant woman who allowed the man to take intimate photographs of her. They've been victims of extortion attempts, according to the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office.
I wonder how that ever happened. Could it be the nude pictures?
Well, you know what? The first one, the man who sent $1,340, very weird amount, by the way.
That is a weird
$1,340 to an address in the Dominican Republic because a person contacted him saying that they would show up at his house for sex.
What? Say that again now. He paid them or they paid him?
He paid them to an address in the Dominican Republic.
To show up to get it on with his wife?
I always pay people in the Dominican Republic to come to my house.
Yeah, exactly. Where else do you get them from?
I mean, naturally,
right?
Well, the cost of travel is not cheap anymore.
Exactly. You don't expect them to travel coach,
no,
do you?
First class, baby, all the way.
Did they get a work visa for this?
So,
How does this happen?
maybe that's why part of the money is there is bribery money, so they can get in. To come over here to now. Does it say who the it was to meet a woman or was it a male he was soliciting?
It was a female, but after he sent the 1340, an unidentified caller contacted the man and told him that he needed to send an additional $4,000.
Wow.
Or he would send an assassin to the man's house.
He would send an assassin with ninja claws. He ended up in Missoula.
You can't get
Well,
sex
what they should have done is combine the sex worker and the assassin.
The ninja claw man.
For efficiency.
Okay, wait a second.
So
it just got put
careful
together
about
in my
the
head.
order that you do things in.
These stories are connected, you see. He thought he said Montana when he said New Mexico. He went to Missoula.
Exactly.
The
assassin went to Missoula.
Claw.
Yeah, exactly. He works for the Triad. And he showed up at the wrong address and wrong city. It all makes sense now. It all makes sense. That is how they're connected. Right there.
Well, and the deputy gave very good instructions to this man after he took down all this information. He told the man to change his cell phone number and to stop soliciting sex over the internet.
That would be a great idea.
That would be
you might want to stop soliciting sex from these people. I'm just saying.
I mean, 1340, that's
From the
pretty.
Dominican Republic.
I'm not trying to judge or anything, but maybe you might want to stop that. It seems like it's costing you a little bit too much here.
The other problem is, if you're trying to get the most bang for your buck, that would not be the efficient way to go.
Don't they have prostitutes? Not that I would know or even want to look, but I would assume somewhere in the great state of New Mexico is a
in Santa Fe? Yeah,
is a prostitute.
Yeah,
Why?
but they're not Dominican.
Well, this is true. But maybe, just maybe, you could find a one of Latin descent and you could pretend.
Like, 1340, I'm kind of in awe at that sum.
I am too.
And there is another story, another person that was extorted.
Another one.
This, I swear this is even almost better. So this one, the second case, it was a pregnant woman who told a sheriff's deputy that she was contacted on Facebook by a stranger asking if she wanted to submit photographs of her belly for a, quote, pregnancy cast.
Oh, so she gets contacted on Facebook saying, hey, you look pregnant to me. Do you want to come, send me some pictures of your gut so your belly, your expected belly so I can make casts? That is weird. How much
is it to make a cast or is it for a television show? I'm not sure what the cast meant.
I'm not sure. I'm going to assume plaster of Paris. Maybe maybe the guy had some type of strange big belly woman pregnant fetish.
Well, he clearly did.
That happens.
Yeah.
Well, sure it does.
He said his name was Martin, and he contacted her via the video service Skype and took photos. And then the man threatened to leak photos of the woman's belly, breast, and genital area to all her Facebook friends
So So 3 people would have seen it. Yeah. So she did not pay him after all?
Well, it wasn't clear from the report what the man was seeking in return for not releasing the photos, and I'm not sure I want to know.
I don't want to know either. It's just wrong. All right, the lady should have known better, number one. Number two, why would she tell anybody? I would be a little embarrassed. Like, that's what's going on. Is I decided to go ahead and submit the photos of all my naughty bits. I didn't think anything bad would ever happen. Oh, joke's on you.
Because it's not really, here's the weird part. It's not really a crime because she was a consenting person of age
adult to another consenting adult.
Gave her photos to another consenting adult. So where's the?
I'm not sure if there's a crime being committed here, but the extortion is.
The extortion would be, yes.
That would be the crime here. Her sending the photos, provided both of them were adults and both of them are consenting, is not a crime.
Right.
So, you know, because every married person's going, oh, crap, I sent a picture to my wife. Does that mean I'm going to go to jail right now?
The one thing it is, though, it's all very tawdry.
It really is very tawdry. Very, very tawdry. Very sick and twisted. There are some sick and twisted puppies out there. There really is. Clarissa, you already knew this. But the rest of us, we're shocked. We're shocked at some of these stories. We're shocked that there's so many Wolverine and Joker wannabes. We're shocked that Pennywise all of a sudden decided to want to buy claws one day. We're all shocked at these stories. And I'm not quite
I'm a little
sure.
shocked at those two, I'll be honest. Those are weird.
They are weird stories, and we're all a little shaken for it.
It passes the Clarissa shock.
It does. And
Like,
that is not easy to do. That is not easy to do. In fact, we're going to have Clarissa shock seal of approvals. We're going to stamp everything with it. But that being said, guys, that was your true crime headlines for Wednesday, the 24th of May. Don't go anywhere. We got, of course, Fox News, and then we're going to be talking A&E. That's right, Cold Case Files, right again. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lisa Brady. President Trump pledging to win the fight against terrorism after the Manchester bombing.
It's a horrible situation. What took place is horrible, unthinkable, but we will win 100%.
He's in Brussels meeting with the Belgian Prime Minister ahead of a NATO summit tomorrow. Meantime, the search for possible accomplices to the suicide bomber in Manchester. 7 people now in custody in all, including 3 family members of bomber Salman Abedi. 1 brother in Britain, another brother in Libya, accused of having ties to ISIS.
His father also taken into custody, according to the Associated Press, for interrogation purposes. There is a suspicion that the bomber himself had links not just to Al-Qaeda but also to ISIS, and that he did travel many times to Libya and also to Syria as well.
Fox's Rick Leventhal in Manchester, where the head of the Islamic Center is condemning the attack, calling it an act of cowardice that has no place in any religion.
The horrific atrocity that occurred in Manchester on Monday night has shocked us all. It has indeed shocked us all.
He also denies that Abedi ever worked at that Islamic Center. The management team for Ariana Grande just announcing her concerts are now canceled through June 5th. That's a week from Monday. Grande flew home to family in Florida after the Manchester attack. She had been scheduled to perform tomorrow night, again in London. In Washington, word that former Senator Joseph Lieberman is no longer under consideration to be FBI director. A senior White House source telling Fox News it's because the president has hired a lawyer for the Russia probe who's from the same law firm where Lieberman is a partner. You're listening to Fox News Radio. Fair and balanced. One other note from Manchester at this hour, a big victory parade that was scheduled for the English Premier Soccer League champions, which this year is the Chelsea club, had been planned for Sunday in London. The club just putting out a statement saying they have canceled it after consulting with police and that they'll make a donation to a fund supporting victims of the attack. Democrats pouncing on President Trump's proposed budget for a second day.
This budget is built atop a foundation of massive tax cuts for the wealthiest in America, and the discredited mantra that these tax cuts will pay for themselves.
House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer, as budget hearings get underway, White House Budget Chief Mick Mulvaney says they had taxpayers in mind with a plan to balance the budget in 10 years.
States have to do it. Families have to do it. Businesses have to do it. I mean, my goodness, my church has to balance its budget or else they cease to function.
Part of the focus is on boosting defense spending, but critics, including some Republicans, are concerned about cuts to social assistance programs. Pay stubs showing that women CEOs are making bigger bucks, but it doesn't mean more women are in top jobs.
Numbers compiled in part by data firm Equilar show that in 2016, women heading companies made on average $13 million more than than in 2015. While that's seen as progress, the number of women who are CEOs has barely ticked upward at 6% last year, up from 5% the previous 2 years. Tops on the list of women CEOs, Virginia Rometty of IBM, who earned a shade more than $32 million last year. Why aren't there more women leading companies? One search firm cites an unconscious bias that keeps women off the leadership track. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
An hour to the close on Wall Street, stocks are higher. The Dow's up 51 points after earlier crossing back over 21K. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News Radio.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
Better known as the Three Amigos of True Crime. Hey, Eric, I hear we got a great guest on tap tonight. Who do we have, man?
We do. We are very excited. Clarissa was just jumping up and down, waving her hair in multiple directions due to the return. The return of Cold Case Files, the venerable Cold Case Files to A&E, and that's coming tomorrow night, May 25th at 10 p.m., and it will be back on the air. In this first episode, Brad Perry had recently returned from his Mormon mission, was going to school, had just gotten engaged. His family never expected that when he went to work for the graveyard shift at his job as a gas station attendant, they would never see him alive again. Brad, known as the peacemaker in his family, was found tied up and brutally beaten in the storeroom of the gas station. No one can imagine a motive for the crime. Who would target a mild-mannered, church-going college kid? Detectives have high hopes that they'll catch the killers. They've got two strong witnesses who provide a sketch of a man they saw with blood on his hands at the gas station, but the witnesses can't pick him out of a lineup, and the case quickly went cold. Nearly 2 decades later, Brad's brother, now a police officer, and a new DA that has close ties to the family decide to look into the case again. They team up with a cold case detective and uncover secrets connected to the gas station that could explain why someone wanted Brad dead. And then new DNA technology helps them place the prime suspect at the scene of the crime. We are excited about the return of Cold Case Files. We will be discussing that with producer Ari Mark. Ari Mark is the co-founder and president of Ample, an independent production studio dedicated to creating distinct, high-quality, scripted, unscripted together, upside down and backwards, and branded content for multi-platforms that is substantive and unexpected. Prior to launching, Ample, Mark was SVP Original Programming for Xbox Entertainment Studios. Prior to that, he was VP of Original Programming for AMC and was responsible for launching the network's first push into non-scripted. While there, he developed the network's most successful series, including Small Town Security, The Pitch, Talking Dead, Comic Book Men, and Making the Mob. Mark also helped build AMC's internal team and workflows from the ground up. Welcome to the program, Ari Mark.
Thank you.
Hey, Ari. Hey, I got to say, you're the guy responsible for Talking Dead?
It's a group effort.
That is cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I just want to let you know, I love that after The Walking Dead, by the way. I was curious who did that. No, I met one of the guys responsible. Very good stuff.
Yeah, it always helps when you have a giant hit, coming before it.
Oh,
The Walking Dead.
Well, that is a good setup show now, isn't it? That little show that could.
Yeah, exactly.
But now, speaking of that, I'm actually, excuse me one sec, I'm really interested in that. Was that the first of the follow-up discussion shows? Because nothing's coming to mind before that. At the time when that show came out, I said, that is such an audacious, ballsy move. They're literally going to have a TV show where they talk about the previous TV show. I thought it would be an utter bomb. What a genius move.
Definitely a pioneer in the space for sure, yeah. And it worked. So it's still going.
Heck yeah, man. Very, very cool. Very cool. Now, but we are here to talk about Cold Case Files. Now, it has been off the air a little while, Cold Case Files, and now it's being rebooted. Were you always a fan of true crime? Is that why you're so passionate about it, or did you love the show? What's your reasoning for wanting to get involved, I guess, is the question.
Well, yeah, I am definitely a true crime fan. I started my career working at Sundance, and Sundance at the time, there was Sundance Channel, which was owned by Robert Redford, and we made a documentary series called The Staircase. And The Staircase, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but it's a really, really, really one of the most incredible pieces of content I've ever seen and was ever part of, and it was following this guy who was actually being convicted of murdering his wife, and the access was incredible. And so the entire show and the series follows this guy in real time, and you basically spend the entire series trying to make up your mind whether you think he did it or didn't do it, because he's a real, he's a middle to upper class guy, got a couple of kids, he seems like a pretty normal dude, but then in the back of your mind you're like, this guy seems like a murderer. So so that kind of turned me on to it, and the sort of sophistication of the storytelling, and really was one of the first, I think, of its class. This was back in 2005. Really pushed the crime genre, I think, forward. I kind of fell in love with true crime then, and then so when we started Ample, we knew, because of my business partner is a cinematographer and a very talented producer, and everything he shoots is very, has a real texture to it, a real cinematic feel, and so crime lends itself very nicely to that, and so that's exactly, so it felt like a natural fit for us to sort of jump into the crime space, and we did, and A&E, approached us, and, to their credit, they recognized that this was a very iconic brand. When in their research, they realized when people think of A&E, one of the brands they first mention in research is Cold Case Files. And, in a TV market where reboots are kind of, taking off, it felt like a natural move for them. And so we did a little bit of a sort of a mini pilot for them to show them the changes we would make to the old version. I think we raised some of the production value, and, I think we did a lot of just a deeper emotional dive, took a little bit more of a point of view from the family's perspective, and deepened some of those investigative moments, and also shot those recreations in a really, really big movie scale kind of way. And so they really loved it. They loved our take on it, and we were lucky enough to be able to go ahead. So wasn't so much my choose. I mean, I would have. It's sort of like a dream come true. I mean, this is the type of show that you want to make, you want to be part of, because it has the credibility already intact.
How long was Cold Case Files running before? Because it's a pretty long-running show, isn't it? Historically?
Yeah, it was running for a really long. Yeah, it was running for a really long time. I want to say something like 10 or 15 years.
Wow, that is a run.
Yeah. So the guys from A&E would probably know better than me. I probably should know that, but I don't. But Bill Curtis actually narrated the original ones, and we actually brought him back to do a little bit. It's not as heavily narrated as the original, but we asked him to do a little bit of narration for us. So there's a nice little throwback to fans.
Very cool. Now you're working with Danny Glover as well, and that is super cool too. I love Danny Glover movies and anything he does. Such a great actor.
Yeah, he's terrific.
How did you decide what cases to take up, and could you give us kind of a preview? Obviously, the show has not yet aired, and we don't want to give away too much, although we all got to see that first episode, and we were talking about, before we got a hold of you, how impressed we were. It really was well done. It was a compelling case, emotionally very powerful, and gosh, what a success story. It's a great episode to lead with.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was, it was a tough choice, because I think all of the episodes are really, they really were held to a pretty high standard, and so they all have to really, I think deliver on multiple levels, both storytelling and visually. But But the Brad Perry case is just, you just have this very sympathetic victim. You have an incredibly sympathetic victim who's a young kid who's just starting his life. And he's sort of like the picture of innocence. He's in this small Mormon town. He's got this supportive family, God-fearing kind of family, and this awful thing happens to him. And I think it's just a great, solid episode that sort of indicates the rupture that happens when, when you take away a family member. Here's what happens. And it's this sort of devastating loss that really never does go away. And yes, the closure helps, and yes, the investigative journey definitely coincides with the familial journey. But at the same time, there's this gaping kind of hole. And the thing that's fascinating about cold cases in general is that they're all predicated on time, right? Like, the thing that makes cold cases different than other types of cases is that they weren't able to be solved. And so on the one hand, the family's put through this like torture where they're waiting and waiting and waiting for the truth. But on the other hand, it's the waiting and it's that time that sort of allows them to get to the truth. In other words, new technology is developed, right? Mm-hmm. So suddenly you're able to take a piece of evidence and look at it in a new light. Or maybe a new investigator comes in, and then he's looking at it through a new framework. So, it's interesting the way that all these episodes sort of hang together with those very similar themes. Of course, mm-hmm. families deal with loss differently, and you get that episode to episode. But in the Brad Perry case, this is definitely a family that rallied around this investigation, and did everything they could to solve it, and definitely had some crisis of faith along the way for sure.
Oh, I can imagine.
Well, the brother certainly, we don't know for sure, but it seems very likely the brother would not have gone into law enforcement if this hadn't happened. That seems mm-hmm. like a kind of one thing that led to another. Mm-hmm. And if he had been in that position, who knows what might have happened. The other thing that's so fascinating about this case, and again, we want to be careful about not giving away too much, and don't forget, friends, A&E tomorrow night, Thursday night, the return of Cold Case Files, and that's at 10 and 9 Central. But I was wondering how often, and Clarissa, I'm sure you can talk about this too, kind of more just generally and about real life, although, of course, these are all real cases. How often is it that our expectations, our assumptions turn out to be just completely wrong? That was something I was just assuming, that the family knew who it was. It was just a matter of, the evidence just hadn't mm-hmm. come together. How often does it turn out it's just utterly wrong?
That happens. Nowhere. That's all the time. Yeah, all the time. When you look at specifically at like eyewitness testimony and how awful it is. Even when somebody knows the assailant, the eyewitness testimony is terrible and has really terrible reliability. I think oftentimes, especially when the family doesn't have closure and is looking for someone to blame, because who wouldn't be, and they want some sort of closure, I think you'll latch on to pretty much anything in the absence of knowing what's going on. And I do think that there's I know that there are a lot of guys in prison that have a lot of crimes behind them that were never convicted, because I hear about a lot of them.
So just weren't caught is what you're saying. Yeah, they're able to fly under the radar, get away with it, or someone else gets convicted of it.
Correct. Yeah, and oftentimes the crimes, hopefully are something a bit lesser than murder, but does it happen? Absolutely.
Well, how many years does it take before a case is technically considered cold?
It's not. It's not really a technical term, and I think that it really goes cold when there's no real formal investigation happening anymore, right? And so sometimes it'll go cold because of simply a lack of resources. Sometimes it'll go cold because of just a lack of evidence. So it can go. We were looking at cases, where it had to be at least 10 years cold. So and I think most of our cases are closer to 20 or 30. Okay. So and that's mostly because I think it illustrates the sort of theme of the series better, where we get to really show the evolution of a town, of a family, of an investigation, of a police department through this lens of time.
It would seem that DNA, man, was a complete game changer for the cold case situations that we haven't, as far as crimes go. I mean, without DNA, they wouldn't have caught this individual. In fact, they, not to ruin it for anyone, but they used a different tactic of DNA, in fact, that had never been used before in the state of Utah. Right. So that's groundbreaking on its own. Want to talk a little bit about the science behind the cold case files?
Sure. I mean, yeah, and I think that's like a lot of people sort of say, and a lot of people say, why now? Why bring this show back now? And why, and that's really a big piece of it, I think, and the execs at A&E and, Laura Fleury, and Evan Lerner, and they really pushed and said, we've got to feel like there's some urgency behind these cases, and what is the reason to be opening them? And so in a lot of them, you have that scientific or technological catalyst that's like, okay, well, this is the reason. Mitochondrial DNA technology. It's like, Jesus, man, what the hell is that? And so
exactly.
So we really, we were able to sort of, and it does give a nice little forensic, I think, piece to the show. Sometimes, yes, there's good investigative work, of course, that goes into it, but oftentimes there is. But a lot of times it's also, have we thought about using this new technology before? And sort of the investigators putting two and two together and being like, okay, well, there's this new thing out there. Can we convince our group to do it? And luckily, in the case of Perry, there were some characters who had some political clout also, and had relationships because it's a small town. I think she babysat the lead investigator. Was a babysitter for Brad's brother. So there was this small town connection, and so they were able to kind of get traction that way.
Maybe someone could answer me this question, and I really haven't looked into it now. Maybe Clarissa knows, maybe you know, heck, maybe even Eric knows, but I kind of have a rudimentary understanding. But for our listeners, what exactly is the microbial DNA?
Isn't it mitochondria?
Mitochondria. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. I was looking at a different article that popped up.
It's for a much. You can do DNA with a much smaller sample. I know that.
Okay.
It's just a much smaller sample, because way back when they first started processing DNA, they had to have a pretty large specimen, a pretty large sample of DNA to even use. And a lot of these cases that they were trying in the very beginning, they used up all the sources of DNA that they had, just trying to get some sort of a match. And the great thing about mitochondrial DNA is you can have a strand of hair. You can have, with just the root, you can have a really, really tiny sample and still get a reliable match, is what I understand.
Very cool. See now, is that new?
Anything genetic. I was saying anything genetic. That you can find genetic material. I think in the mitochondrial DNA, I think that's the difference. So
that is cool.
Is it new? I don't know. I think it's probably about. I think it's close to like the 2003 when a lot of this stuff
it's fairly still new, really. 03 is not that long ago. So it's still a fairly new science. I mean, it's still breaking open a lot of cases that otherwise would stay in the crime lab.
And and I mean, a lot of these have not been processed either. You've got a lot of this DNA just sitting, in boxes until somebody decides to process it.
Yeah. If you're lucky enough that your case is chosen, going, that old case you got sitting there, bring it over here, bring over that box. Let's see if we can make heads or tails of it. And I would imagine that's how it goes sometimes, is they will revisit a case that happens to be cold, just to maybe sometimes even appease the family. I was actually friends with Jacob Wetterling's family, and you guys all know the story of Jacob Wetterling. I'm sure that was taken, and there's a foundation his name. But they had to scream and yell, and every week for 20 years they call the police department. Anything new, every single week. until finally there was a break in the case recently, and a lot of that was because of their diligence. So the families never should give up, because there really can be justice no matter how many years ago it was.
And that's definitely something that comes across in these stories is it's absolutely 100% kept alive by the case is kept alive by very, very passionate detective and incredibly dedicated family members who refuse to stop calling.
It seems to me there's just generically, I mean, in terms of the cold cases in general, there's a really strong emotional / psychological aspect. In other words, when I was just thinking about what would a parallel be, when you think about friendships, right? And there's a saying about new friends are silver and old friends gold. So in a sense, that's what this would be like. You always have new cases. There's always new things going on. There's always that press to the future and to solve what's right before you. But you still have all of these cases that are sitting there getting older and older and older over time, and they're almost like old friends to the extent that, wow, if you're able to really get in there and actually solve one, I would think it's such a powerful emotional positive to finally be able to put that to bed from all perspectives, from the family's perspectives, from the investigators' perspectives, from society's perspective. There's this release that maybe you don't quite get when a new case is solved.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And it feels like that's where the drama comes in, right? And that's where the storytelling piece comes in, and that's I think what sustains hopefully an audience for an hour to sit and watch this thing, is that there's more at stake, right? Because it's 20, 30 years.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And waiting for that.
Yeah, waiting that long for some type of resolution. I mean, thank God for shows like yours and others that are actually tackling the cold case, but it's got to be hard to dredge that up. For them sometimes as a family member to relive that moment in time.
Oh yeah.
And so that's where the real emotion comes in. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. No, I was just saying. I mean, we conducted some interviews for, more than 8 hours of family members. Where we would take constant breaks, just because of the emotional piece. And we tried really hard to obviously be respectful of their experience, because it's somewhat far. It really is somewhat foreign, to us, since we've never thankfully gone through it personally. But we would sort of, we would conduct these just incredibly long interviews to sort of let people kind of tell the story the way that they needed to tell it, because it is cathartic for them,
Sure it is.
Definitely cathartic, but yes, incredibly painful. And I think dredging it up is, they're very brave people. Let's just put it that way. And the fact that they're willing to share their stories, because I think they know that there is some level of, not just catharsis for themselves, but for other families that are dealing with something similar. I think they feel like there's some, it's a small something that they can do that's actually, that's active. And it's been great, sort of being part of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any thought, Clarissa? Have you spent time thinking about the psychological aspect, both of just kind of what I was talking about in general, cold case versus current, and then of course from the point of view of the actual participants, namely family members, most specifically, of course.
Oh yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'm bound to confidentiality, so I cannot contact anybody if I know about unsolved crimes, and I know about a lot of unsolved crimes. Like I said, most of them don't rise to the level of murder, but some do, and the best that I can do is really encourage the perpetrator to make amends at some point.
I could just hear you there. Dr. Cole, when I was 7, I stole that Snickers bar. That was me, and they never solved it. think I should turn myself on.
That does happen. That has happened. Yeah, they usually have to make amends for that, though. I find when they do the petty theft as children, they talk about their parents bringing them back in, did nothing apparently.
Well, evidently not. You think it would have done a little more. One time when I was a small child, now I did steal a candy bar, and my father caught me, and it was a local grocery store. He marched me back in the store, and over the PA, right, the public address, I did announce my name, and I was a thief. I said, "Hi, I'm Joel Sturgis, and I stole a candy bar today. I'm a thief. It was wrong of me." And he made me say that to everybody, like in the store. Shoppers stop what they're doing to shoot their gaze towards me of disdain. "How dare you steal that Mars bar? How dare you do that?" I would have thought I was D.B. Cooper on The Lamb, the way they treated me. All right?
You miscreant!
That explains a lot.
Did you steal again?
No, God, no, because I didn't want to have to go back to the grocery store and go over the PA system.
Are you going to make me tell about when I shoplifted the New York Dolls first album?
You should. You should really tell. Yeah. I told you about
that.
I just did. I was just absolutely, I was about, I guess maybe 13, 14. It had just come out. I really, really wanted it. I didn't have any money. I worked up this huge, elaborate plot in my mind, I should say justification of why it was okay. But when the time came, I had it all plotted out, and every moment felt like an hour. And I was sweating bullets, and I'm sure I looked like the most ridiculously guilty adolescent who had ever lived, my eyes darting furtively back and forth. And I finally, I had a bag. It was just, nothing all that exciting about it. I just was able to work it into a bag from another store and somehow made it out of there. But it was so horrifying an experience, and I felt so guilty. There was a slight thrill of getting away with it, but that was the least of my emotions, and I just said, this is awful. I don't like how I feel. It isn't worth having it. And, I felt as bad having from within what I did to myself, my guilty conscience, as Joel, you did, having to announce.
Oh, yeah, from everybody I knew.
So that was it. I never did. I don't think I've ever stolen anything again.
What was bad for me is I go down the street now and people go, "We heard about the candy bar."
Still to this day?
Well, no, when I was a kid, you see, it took me forever to live that down. We heard about the candy bar you took. I'm 17 now, okay? I was 5. Let it go. No, we don't have to. It's still theft.
Might as well live in the small Mormon town to be featured tomorrow evening.
Yes, yes. On this edition of Cold Grocery Crimes, we are.
It was a frozen Snickers bar.
Well, it was by the frozen food aisle. So I guess kinda it could be construed as being part of the frozen goods area because it was in that vicinity.
I was gonna say that, like, I think a Mormon community is a pretty closed community, a pretty, is obviously religious, fairly stringent morals, and I would think that something like a crime like the one that is going to be discussed on the show, Brad Perry, would hit them maybe even harder than average America. Would that be accurate or no?
I think that in our covering of the case, it was. I think that's very accurate. The family was, besides being devastated, but the community around them sort of, I think, went to a bit of a place of, just sort of locking them up, themselves up, and not really interacting, with the world, and that was sort of sad to see. But I also think that they were, there was a level of commitment that didn't really stop, and if you in the episode you'll see that there was the way that the family actually found out about the death of the murder of their son was was a friend. They were actually at SeaWorld.
Oh, no.
And, and a family friend went out to tell them. Went to SeaWorld, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh," and he didn't have he couldn't bring himself to tell them, so he just stayed with them and
watch
a little comical, but he stayed with them. He just sort of like didn't know what to do, you know.
Yeah.
And he finally in the car ride on the way back from SeaWorld, he told them in the car, and because they couldn't figure out why he was there.
Well, yeah, I'd be wondering. You came all this way to see Shamu. That's great, but why are you hanging out with me? You know, I'd be like, what do you got to say here? You know, you just didn't find us here. I mean,
and then the mom so the mom just lost it and, you know, started vomiting and they headed back. But it was it's pretty awful.
Talk about devastation. We got to run to break. But we'll come back. More A&E Cold Case Files along with Mr. Ari Mark. Don't go anywhere. Be right back right after this. Otherwise, I'll steal your candy bar and you won't be very happy. After Hours AM, and if you're listening to us via podcast, make sure you like us, follow us, review us, tell your friends about us, tell grandma about us, and keep listening.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If pop culture is to be believed, roughly 40% of all people are actually vampires, or dating one. Well, undead or not, you can always save on a clean, comfortable room at Motel 6, even if you sleep during the day because direct sunlight turns you into a pile of sparkly coffee grounds. Speaking of which, we have free coffee every morning. You day sleepers may want to go for the decaf. I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you. Book online at motel6.com.
Anavar Media LCC is a dedicated team of professionals committed to helping business development scale and protect their websites, mobile applications, enterprise software solutions in the Northeast Ohio area. Locally owned since 2012, our client-centered values truly sets Anavar apart. Contact us today to learn how you can get 25% off your first project. Call them at 234-380-4852. Again, that's 234-380-4852. Or visit them at www.anavar.com. Again, that's www.anavar.com.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teams, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
If you're listening to After Hours AM, do you have a question for the guests or even the host? That's really easy. Go ahead and email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Are you feeling like picking up the phone and being part of the show? Call us at 612-326-6874, 612-326-6874. Come be part of the madness.
Rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again. Yes, you will, precious. You will get the hose.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. And we are talking A&E Cold Case Files. Coming right back at you. That's right. It's coming back, returning May 25th. I cannot wait because I was a big fan of the original run of the show, and I got to tell you guys, but just between you and me and the wall and 10 million people listening, the new one's a little bit better than the old one. I'm just saying. I like the new one personally because it's a little more dramatically story-driven. It feels like you're watching a movie. And that's what I liked about it the most, really, was the cinematic quality and everything else. So, but what did you guys think, Eric and Clarissa? Are you guys right on board with me there?
Clarissa, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I did love the old one. I watched the old one forever, and I used to love that it came on really late at night, too, in reruns, so I could just sit up and watch it. I do think it's better. I do think there's more access to the actual people involved. I feel like the old version focused so much on sort of the forensic science of it, which obviously is a big part of it, but getting access and showing it the way more emotional content, which I like. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, it's about people, right? And it's people's stories and it's people's lives, and usually we're talking about a murder here. So someone's life was cut short, tragically, brutally, and that is the focus and should be the focus. I think the process is also very interesting, and it's great to learn how it works and what were the nuts and bolts and the details of how the case unfolded and how it was actually solved. But I think from an emotional and storytelling standpoint, that would always be secondary, and it certainly seems to be the case. Absolutely, with the episode that we were able to preview that's coming on tomorrow night, the return of Cold Case Files to A&E, and that's 9 Central tomorrow night, Thursday. And we are speaking with, now what is exactly your title on the show? You're an exec producer, Ari Mark?
Yeah, I'm one of the executive producers and the owner of the production.
Ari, you should just said, I'm God, and left it right there.
I'm God, small g on the show, which brings up.
That would have come off really great.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I said that would have come off well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, all of your minions would then prostrate themselves before you, and, it would be cool. So my question is, how did you, in fact, dig up these, no pun intended, these cold cases? How did you decide which to do? Where did they come from? What was your process for selecting the cases to then be filmed for the show?
Well, there's certain, let's call them sort of boxes that you have to check, right? When you're trying to create a television show that's going to be, 42 minutes of content. You want to ensure that when you're dealing, especially with commercial breaks, because we're on cable TV, you want people to come back. So you are first, regardless of what the show is, you're always looking for what are the cliffhanger moments, right? Especially in a crime series. You want to ensure that you can kind of keep people watching from act to act. So that means the story's got to have enough meat on the bone, right? Everything's a pun in this genre. Sorry, but
I missed that one.
So yeah. And then separate from that, you have a network that I think is a true player in the crime space, and their expectations are very high about what types of cases that we should be covering, what types of stories with what types of characters. They've been doing it a long time, so they've seen a lot. And with the emergence of true crime as a genre and really getting very cluttered in that space, even more pressure to kind of find stories that are going to really stand out. So the stories that we chose were held to a very high bar, and they needed to have, to be solved after 2003 because we wanted them to be current. Sure. They needed to be cold cases, which means that there was a long lag of time when people gave up on the space, gave up on the crime, or where leads went dead. There had to be access to both the family side and the investigative side, which is difficult because there's definitely shows out there, and that I think maybe cast them not necessarily in the best light. And you can tell someone all day, we're not going to do that, but the proof is really in the pudding. And so now,
sure.
hopefully if we do more episodes, it'll be even easier to cast the show because we've sort of proven we've given it that extra sophistication and that extra kind of credibility and substance that I think family members and investors alike will be able to and be proud of, because you're dealing with some serious content here. So I think there's a responsibility there. So then once we have the access to those stories, it becomes about are there sort of evidentiary twists in that case? Is there something very unexpected that is somewhat marketable or somewhat has a real sort of hook to it? And so all these cases did, and amazingly, when you have a murder that happens and there's a very long period of time when it doesn't get solved, they pretty much all have it. Just because that's the nature of crimes and murders that there's so much at stake. You're talking about someone's life, and there's always a family on the other end who's desperate for answers, right? So these elements are in place. The question is, how much time do you have as producers to really dig in, to your point, and find the information about these cases, right? Because you have a 5,000-page case file oftentimes. So I'm not sitting there. I don't want to sit there and read that thing.
Oh, heck no! I'd never have time to do that. For me, but you guys definitely pour over it, and because really, when you watch it and then you kind of read some of the newspaper reports, you guys include a lot of information in that 1 hour presentation.
Yep.
And that has got to be hard to pick and choose what makes it in and what doesn't.
Yeah, you pretty much hit it on the head. I mean, that is probably the hardest piece of this, is that we just don't have enough time to tell the stories. I mean, most of them really do need it. They feel like there's enough content for 2 hours in each story, and the more that you condense that, the more an audience is like, okay, wait, what? Like, I have to keep track of this. What happened to that suspect?
Yeah, exactly.
Who are we following now? And so, it's challenging.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be, especially from a production point of view. You kind of got to weigh, okay, no, this part's really important, but so is this part, but how important is that part away in your assessment of the shows?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what I was saying is it typically tends to be the things that don't push story in a new direction. So if you have 100 suspects, only 5 of them are going to potentially lead to something real, something tangible. So, the random drifter who happened to be drifting through town at the time of when the murder happened, and they quickly clear him with a blood test. There's not a lot of story there, right? Mm-hmm. So you sort of whittle down the ones that really do feel like they could be viable suspects. So then when you debunk them, it's a little more twist and turny, and a little more interesting.
Yeah. I like that technical term, twist and turny.
Yeah, that's the best I got.
That was super cool. I like that. When I become an executive producer, I'm going to say, give me all your twisty turny plots. Keep the rest.
We'll make sure that doesn't happen.
All right, so tell us about some of the upcoming episodes. Tell us some about what can we listen to, please.
Sure. Let's see. We've got Shannon Siders, which is a pretty well-known case of a young girl in rural Michigan who's I don't want to spoil it, or maybe I should, but basically she doesn't show up. She's got her dad's a single parent, and he's working at a bottling company. I want to say Coca-Cola, and he comes home and she's gone. She told him she was going out with friends, and she's nowhere to be found. And the interesting thing about it is the group of friends that she was hanging out with don't seem to know anything, and they all seem to have they all seem to have their alibis intact. And sure, they were in the woods and they were drinking and all that good stuff, but nobody can give much info. And what I like about the story is I want to say it's 33 years or something before it gets solved. It's really a long time, and there is, investigators keep revisiting this group of friends, just hoping that something's going to change. And what's fascinating is, ultimately somebody does come forward who did see something and witness something, and the sort of pain of having to live with that their whole life and not come forward, does really add a new element. And I think oftentimes with these cases is, somebody does know something. It's just a question of how long it's going to take for them to actually break,
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting, I think it's an interesting idea. So that's a great case, and her murder was just horrific. I mean, they actually cut out her perineum.
Oh, Lord. Where's that located? It sounds painful.
Yeah, it's painful.
It's sort of like, it's where you don't want to be.
Ah, okay. Okay. I would Google it, but it sounds pretty bad. So I'll let people Google that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's in an effort to hide, obviously to hide a rape or something like that, and so it's an incredible story. Her father is just such an unbelievable interview. He's like one of the most heartbreaking people I've ever come across. Because he says, I'd be a grandpa right now. I would be a grandfather, and instead I'm visiting her grave. And it's just like it's incredible. And so you really want to find out who did it. And I think it's got a lot of a lot of it takes place in the woods, so it's got a lot of sort of, I think, classic horror elements that I think are also, for anybody who's a true crime lover, I think will like this. And we've got the case of Joe Clark, who was actually a lieutenant, who was actually murdered. They thought that he died of a heart attack. His wife was watching basketball with him, and he walked over she heard a thump, and she saw that he collapsed in the kitchen, so she thought he had a heart attack. And then maybe she hit his head on he had hit his head on the counter or something like that. It wasn't until they got to the hospital and they looked at him that the doctor said, and they actually had his son was the one who had to identify him, which is just really also heartbreaking. And they turn his head over, and there's a bullet wound right in his head, but it's very clean. And so they realized he was murdered. I mean, this is a lieutenant of the police department there who's murdered in his own home.
Was it a sniper thing?
Through a sniper.
Okay, it was a sniper that got him. That explained why she didn't hear anything. It was a sniper. Which, wow, man, that.
So what's interesting about that, of course, is that the investigation then turns into, wait a second, if it's a sniper style shooting. And the bullet, they find some shells, and they examine the bullet spray of the gun that was used, and through that they're able to determine that it's a certain type of gun that was used. And when they realized a certain type of gun, they realized it had to have been law enforcement that did it.
Whoa!
So it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so I would imagine. Yeah, that is crazy. It was law enforcement that did it, and that'll be, of course, featured on the show. I mean, people can watch this case, so we don't want too deep about it. Now, when they actually catch the people that have done the crime, do they go, oh my God, thank God I've been caught, my conscience was eating me alive, when they finally get convicted?
Everyone's different. I mean, most of them vomit. There's a lot of that going on.
A lot of Ralphing going on. Okay.
Yeah, we have one. We had one person where we actually have the archive of it that we play in the episode, where the perp is the killer is in the back seat of the car, of the police car, and they're taking him away, and there's cameras in the car, so we have the archive of it, and he actually falls asleep.
That's not uncommon.
Really?
Actually,
I would not be sleeping in the back
it's not uncommon for a guilty person to fall asleep. Yeah.
Exactly. Which I think is a really interesting tidbit that I didn't know. I'm glad you know that, because I was like, okay, I had never heard of that, but it was just amazing to me, because I was like, okay, wow, there's this sense of like weird relief.
Yeah, it must be.
They can finally just sort of be like, oh God,
it's
over. And stop living with it. Yeah, it's over. It's over.
That's strange. Yeah. Dr. Cole, Clarissa, what's the psychology behind it? Is that truly what it is? It's that conscience having that weight lifted off it? Is that why they say, hey, I'm going to catch some 40 winks now in the squad car?
I think so. I think that for the most part, it's that. It could be somebody that is so psychopathic that they literally don't care. I mean, that's the other option is like, hey, I'm in a squad car, I'm in a room, I know I'm going to be here a long time, might as well catch a nap. But I think most of the time it is because even if they're not really consciously aware of it, they've been hauling this secret around for their entire lives, some for many, many years. And once they're finally in the back of a cop car or in an interrogation room, it's over. They know. I can rest.
And there's that sigh of relief. Interesting, guys. Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah. In another case in Ohio, an African American family, and when the police finally came and they did actually track down the killer at the end, they tell this great story of, they knock on her door. She says, oh, yeah, come in. And they walk in. They sit down. And as soon as they mention the murder of Anna Mae Florence, this woman, also murdered in her own home, this killer literally just her entire body just starts pouring out sweat, wow. The pores just open, and we actually tried to we did a recreation of literally the sweating, just because it was so, it was.
What do you say to someone that's sweating like that? Like, wow, you got a little problem over there? Yeah, you're a little guilty? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah.
You're either guilty or you ate way too much salt.
Yeah, exactly.
Way too much.
Probably a little both.
Clarissa, you had a particular case you were interested in that you wanted to, that you mentioned that will be in an upcoming episode. You want to mention that?
Yeah, it was the murder case of Shauna Howe.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up. She disappeared after a Halloween celebration. I just thought that was so tragic. Your kid goes out for, to celebrate Halloween, and then they disappear.
It's definitely one of our strongest episodes, and the most difficult one for me personally to be part of and conduct interviews for. It's a young girl, about the age of my daughter, who is, she's leaving. She's in a small town called Oil City, Pennsylvania, industry town. And she's walking home from a Girl Scout meeting, and it's Halloween, so they're wearing their Girl Scout. It was a Girl Scout celebration, so they're wearing their Girl Scout outfits. Sorry, not the Girl Scout outfits. Their Halloween outfit costumes. And she's walking with a friend, and she was only a block. It was only a block in the same direction, so they split up. And the friend was like, "Do you want me to walk with you?" She's like, "No." It's a small town, and yeah, it was pretty nuts. She's kidnapped off the streets, and the only information the cops had was that it was a red car. There was a witness who had heard a scream. There was a red car, and what we got in that case was so much emotion, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about it is, 5 years later on Halloween, the exact same thing happens to another kid. So
that is so. I mean, that's so. Just to I don't want to ramp up the fear of people out there too much. Just to kind of put it in perspective, any sort of abduction, like a stranger type abduction, that happens in less than 1% of abduction cases. So it is that rare.
That is really rare.
Yeah, but when it happens, it.
Now I've noticed though, small towns are not immune to violence any more than big towns are, because case in point, the one that you guys are kicking off with took place in a very small town in Utah.
Yep.
So small towns are not insulated.
actually think all of our cases take place in small towns. You know, and the reason for that is, you know, I actually don't know the statistics, so I'm not going to pretend to know, but you know, I do think that, you know, from a storytelling standpoint, it's far more dramatic to tell a small town story, because we're not just telling the story of a family, and we're not just telling the story of one victim. We're telling the story of this entire place that's shifted and changed and traumatized, and you know, and feels like it's lost something too, because it's, you know, something was taken away, and there's this, you know, sense of innocence that definitely goes away. So most of the cases are small towns, and there's just a different feel, I think, especially for cold case files and for the cold case files audience, which I think many of them do not live in big cities on the coasts. I think that it's a little more familiar.
Well, it's
and iconically American.
Hey guys, this is Annie. We just want to jump in and say we should wrap this up in a few minutes.
Yeah,
be mindful of our
time. Absolutely. We're love talking with him, and we will let him out of here. So,
we said 6, so we want to give him his time.
All right. Well, thanks a ton, Ari, for coming on, and look forward to seeing more. I really do. Very, very good stuff. You're not going to want to miss, of course. That's Cold Case Files A&E returns May 25th, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. Be there or be square. Otherwise, Ari, he'll come to your house, man. I'm just saying, you never know.
Yeah, okay. I'm a big guy.
That's right. Don't mess with him. Okay, till next time, take care of each other, love each other, and listen to After Hours AM and enjoy true crime. Hours AM, and please remember to like us on Facebook and also follow us over on Twitter.